So a little bit of Starfield news. At least it's news for me. It might not be news for everybody because I'm still in like the onboarding process of getting up to speed with Starfield. And I found this amazing article over here at Game Rant. It's titled "Starfield is a New Beginning for Bethesda." And I've kind of browsed through it. I haven't really read it in depth. That's what we're going to do here today together. I wanted to get into this with everybody because I think it's an interesting conversation to have. I am not on the bandwagon of anti-Bethesda, so we should get that out of the gate right from the get-go immediately, because I know some people who come on the Starfield videos will immediately be like, Bethesda this, Bethesda not that. I'm not in your camp. I'm sorry, I'm just not. Nothing you say is going to change my mind on that. I like Bethesda games. I have played their games for as far back as I can remember, back to Morrowind, right? I've played all their games. I've always found enjoyment in their games. I like every Star Wars game I play. I like every Bethesda game I play. I like every BioWare game that I play. And yes, that includes Mass Effect Andromeda. I really enjoyed that game. I know I'm a rarity in that, but I did. I like games, period. And Bethesda has always made great games. For me, I've always enjoyed myself in them. So this has been an interesting read to me because there are parts of this where you can see that there is obviously a portion of people in the gaming community who just can't tolerate bugs in releases of games. And I get that to a degree because as consumers, we want the things we're paying for to be perfect. That's true. However, I will say that everything that's ever launched in the history of games ever has had bugs. Everything has had bugs. You may not have had a bug on your system for the game that you say you never had a bad experience with, but that doesn't account for all the other people who may or may not have had different experiences. So that's also a valid part of this discussion because everyone deals with bugs at some point or the other. As an example, as much fun as I'm having in Baldur's Gate 3 as of this recording, and it has been a flawless experience in my mind, the launch, there is a slight little hiccup with the controller UI, and that is occasionally during combat, the UI will just disappear, and the only way to get it back is to do a quick load. Is that a big deal? No, it's not. It's not a game breaking thing. Is it an annoyance? Absolutely. But that's the difference. One is an annoyance and one is a game breaking thing that you just can't recover from. So now that we've got that out of the way, I think it is a great place to start approaching this article from, because I think that it's a great read, even though it is sort of coming up from the angle of, Bethesda needs to pay for their things that they've done over the years. There's some of that in here, and it always makes me shake my head when I see those things because I don't get it. I don't get it. So the article talks about how it's rare for a huge developer to get the chance to wipe the slate clean and start again, but that's exactly what Starfield is doing for Bethesda. Now there have been other companies that have had things in their past. BioWare, the Anthem launch, which also was very botched. Great game, but just buggy as hell when it launched. I would put Anthem up there with the as bad of a launch experience as Cyberpunk 2077. I was getting about the same amount of blue screen crashes on my PlayStation Slim on Anthem as I did with Cyberpunk 2077. I still thought those were great games that were very fun from a storyline perspective, even though the launch experiences of those games was very poor and definitely stained the reputations of these companies. And I think that that's important for people to understand. They lost revenue. They lost the most important thing to them because those games were not good. And so in a way, they paid for their mistakes. So I think that when people look at, whether or not a company is allowed to come back from that, it's like, well, they've already had their punishment. Like, they don't need to be punished twice or thrice. They made their mistake, they patched the game, they got it up to some sort of standard. They may not have delivered on all of their promises. That's just life. Sometimes things happen. And I realize that that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, especially when you're looking at something like Anthem, where EA just pulled out and completely abandoned the game. That sucks. It does suck. It's still there. They've left it online for people to go play and enjoy, but the community is, you know, toasted because of that. However, EA had publishes hundreds of great games, and BioWare produces and makes a ton of great games, and have, all of these decades of games that have enriched my life immensely over the years. Just because they've had a hiccup along the way doesn't mean I'm going to crucify them for having a crappy launch or bugs in a game at some point down the road. So they talk here about how Bethesda is one of the longest running Western developers in the world. And over the past 30 years, they, got started with like the Wayne Gretzky hockey games and then go on to do the Elder Scrolls games all the way back in the mid 90s and so on and so forth. And now they're dropping Starfield on everybody. And I think the most recent controversy for them was Fallout 76. The launch of that game was very, very rocky, and it led to a lot of people just it stained their reputation. Now, I played it at launch and I didn't enjoy it for one reason and only one reason. It was not a bad game, it just didn't have NPCs. And for me personally, I need story if I'm going to really sink my teeth into a game. So I needed there to be NPCs and people to interact with. When I went back and played it in 2022 with Maduros, it was a completely different experience, and I loved every moment of Fallout 76. I thought it was a great game, but I came back to it several years later after Bethesda recovered from that fumble. And I think that's the key thing here. They recovered from the fumble. Like, they're not a company that makes bad games and just leaves them there. Like, they make great games, and if they have some flaws at launch, they improve upon them. Some people have said some crazy things about Fallout 4, which I always find interesting to hear about, because from a commercial and critical perspective, Fallout 4 is like one of the biggest successes of Bethesda's, you know, backlog, up there with like Skyrim. And I know some people have had their things to say about that game, but you can't take away from the fact that it was a commercially and critically successful game. There may be things about it that you didn't like, and that's completely valid, but it doesn't invalidate the fact. And the fact is, it sold a ton of copies and it pleased a bunch of people and it won a bunch of critics' hearts. And, it was a great game for many, 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 many people. Um, they go on to talk about how Starfield is Bethesda's chance to start again. Um, it's basically, um, in my mind, they're looking at this, the news articles and a lot of customers who had poor experiences here and there, um, are looking at Bethesda and saying, this is it. This is your last shot. Make it or break it, And I don't necessarily think that that represents, from what I understand of the gaming industry, as both a game developer, a person covering gaming news, and being hip deep in it as a content creator, streamer, so on and so forth. I've never got the sense that it's a make it or break it scenario. It's this is a great game that is going to sell a ton of copies that a ton of people are going to have a great time in, and there are going to be some people who don't have a great time, but those same people don't have a great time in a lot of other games. So, I don't have fun in every game I play. I shouldn't be expected to have the same level of fun in every game I play. I think it's a very, um, you know, uh, from an analytical perspective, it's like art. Everyone has the piece of art that they like. It's entirely subjective what that is. It's not an objective point of view, and that's key here. They mentioned Fallout 76 and everything else, but then they talk about how Starfield is not just Bethesda's opportunity to come back from the brink, but also Xbox's chance to come back from the brink. And I question that, because even though Xbox, I think, has sold less copies than the PS5, for the people who are in the Xbox ecosystem, what's not to love? Like, the Series X is a great machine. The company gives us a catalog, a massive catalog of games if you have the Ultimate like I do between the console and the PC, and you can go between, and there's crossplay and all these other things. Obviously, it would, the games where they have full crossplay like Diablo, where it's also going into the PlayStation, it's I'm seeing more and more games come about because of that. But I think most people love who are in the Xbox environment love the environment because it does provide you with a lot of value for your money. Um, and Bethesda being a part of that stable of companies, you got to think that Microsoft didn't just buy Bethesda. They bought Obsidian Entertainment. They bought In Exile Entertainment. Like Microsoft went around hand picking and buying up these really cool independent RPG developers over the course of several years, and then they ramped it up and they went after like Bethesda, which is a big name in that same pond. And the reason Bethesda has that big name is because they make great games, even if they have the occasional fumble or buggy launch. We've also got the entirety of not just what they're producing from an RPG's perspective, which is the storyline that we're going to get to do, but also the ship building and the outpost building. And I'm sure there's going to be cosmetic aspects to this because you can take. What's up, everybody? Quick commercial break here to give it a shout out to our guild champions, who are the highest tier memberships here on YouTube: Ancient Entity, Assassin Gamer 94, Bubbleonia Rising, Crazy's Relative, Mujin, and Remedy. Thanks so much for the highest tier membership, and thanks to all of the members who support the channel because you keep me doing this full time. You too can become a supporter if you're new here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Join as a member. There's 3 different tiers. We do lots of special stuff, private polls, private videos. You get a shout out if you're the highest tier membership, but you can also do one-off donations in the form of super chats on any live stream or premiere you see, and of course super thanks on any upload or YouTube short. Whatever you can contribute, it's great. Keeps me on the air full time, keeps the cats fed, keeps the homestead running. Anyway, back to the video, everybody. Take all the guns can be customized and your suits can be customized and everything else. There's a lot going on with Starfield, and I think that it's definitely something where if you've loved their past work, you're gonna love this game as well. It's not gonna be everything for everybody. I've heard some people saying it's not as good as Elite Dangerous, and it's like, well, Elite Dangerous isn't even in the same category of game as Starfield, so why are you making that comparison? That's an open space, starship only, no avatar. There's no linear storyline. There's no cut scenes like there are in, um, a Bethesda game. Like, what are you talking about? Um, I think that if you like that cinematic narrative with the Constellation Group in particular, I think we're all going to be pretty amazed. They also talk about how if Starfield doesn't deliver, then it could do irreparable damage to Bethesda's already vulnerable brand. Okay, there is something to say about a company who has had some, you know, public missteps in recent years, but that doesn't put them out of the running at all. They have a big enough audience that any release they do is going to generate enough sales to keep the company moving forward. Now, if that's is that going to be enough for their new, big chief, which is Microsoft, that remains to be seen. But I would say, as we kind of talked about in the beginning of the video, they've already been any company that has had a flawed launch in the past 10 years has already suffered pretty dramatically from sales because the social media aspect of the way we live now, that news goes out immediately. And then if my 10 friends tell me that the game's going to be a bad experience, then there's a chance I might not try that game. Now, as I've grown older as an adult, I've learned to care less and less about what other people say. That comes with age, but also keeping in mind that if a bunch of people are saying something about something, then maybe there's at least a kernel of truth to that. And when I look at Bethesda as a company, I see a company who has 30 plus years of amazing games that they have produced. In that time, have they had a couple of hiccups? Yes. So has any company that's been around for 30 years. I challenge you to find a single company that in 30 years of operating has never had a misstep along the way and a little hiccup that disturbed a portion of their player base. I challenge you to find that. If you can, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Otherwise, I'm extremely excited for Starfield, and I can't wait to play this game. As I've talked about before, I own the premium edition on the Xbox. I'm ready to dive in. Yes, I wish it was, I wish they had more crossplay stuff, but it's a start. Not every game that comes out has it perfectly. Diablo 4 is an example of a game that launched with a perfect ecosystem of I can play it on the Xbox, they can play it on the PlayStation, they can play it on an older console, I can play it on an older PC, a modern PC, and we're all in that same ecosystem no matter what gaming system we play on. That is something I think all companies should strive for, but it's not going to take away from my enjoyment of Starfield because it is at the end of the day a single player game. And eventually it will come everywhere, much like other games have done across ecosystems over the years. So, anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Join our Discord. Links are down below, and I'll see you in the next Starfield video or more Baldur's Gate 3 video or Cyberpunk video or podcast, whatever. Until next time.